So tonight we have Gwen Redcliffe presenting The Life of a Dahlia, a seasonal journey. Dahlia, we will talk about that later. Gwen is a third generation Vancouver Islander born here in Duncan. She has been a Vancouver Island Master Gardener since 2013. Her and her husband Norman are also members of the Mill Bay Garden Club and the Victoria Dahlia Society. She has been recognized for her service as the Cowichan Valley District Planner here in Duncan. She has also been recognized for the donation from her sale of her dahlias to the Mill Bay Garden Club to benefit bursaries for students interested in horticultural studies. As members, Gwen and her husband, of the Victoria Dahlia Society, they serve as clerk assistants to the judges for the annual flower show. There is a cultivar named after Gwen Redcliffe. It is in the process of being recognized by the American Dahlia Society, and it came from a hybridized seed grown by them. It is a beautiful single open face bloom, and I believe Gwen has a slide of it later in her presentation, so can't wait to see that. So without further ado, Gwen Redcliffe.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to read off my introduction, and then we'll go through some little housekeeping with this presentation. So when we think of historical origins, we often refer to roots. Today, we're talking about tubers. Spaniards reported finding plants growing in Mexico in 1525. The tubers were known to the Aztecs as a food source, and it was used to treat epilepsy. Dahlias were cultivated in Europe since 1787. The plant is named in the honor of Anders Dahl, a Swedish botanist. Fast forward, in 1963, the dahlia was designated as the national flower of Mexico, and it was the year of the dahlia in 2019. It's a symbol of everlasting union, weddings, creativity, change, and inner strength. I really want to thank both Kendra and April, and certainly Joe, for the support that I've been given. I'm actually speaking from the library, and I also want to thank a fellow Master Gardener, Joanne Barwise, who I now feel I'm an advanced Techno-Nanosaurus. Okay, here we go. So I will read this out. The seminar is the property of the Vancouver Island Regional Library and Vancouver Island Master Gardeners Association. It is intended for education purposes only. Commercial use of all or part of the seminar or its contents is prohibited without express written consent from the Vancouver Island Master Gardeners Association and the Vancouver Island Regional Library. The information in this seminar is science-based and is accurate to the best of VIMCA's knowledge. Use of information in this seminar is at the sole discretion, responsibility, and liability of the user. The Vancouver Island Master Gardeners Association is a chapter of the Master Gardeners Association of British Columbia, which is part of an international organization of specially trained volunteer teachers who work in partnership with public sector agencies and private enterprise to teach and promote science-based, sustainable horticultural knowledge and methods. Let us begin. Okay, a simple guide to growing dahlias. Best plans for great dahlias gives satisfaction. Buying, planning, planting, feeding, growing, digging, gathering, storing, hopefully leads to satisfaction. Okay. My love affair with dahlias. My husband, Norman, introduced me to dahlias. And, well, what is the purpose of having your dahlias? If the size of a garden permits, many growers have separate beds. One bed will grow rows for cutting to sell, blooms, bouquets, and another bed for show dahlias. There will also be dahlias planted throughout the landscape. You may buy a dahlia already potted, ready to plant after the last frost, or a tuber with an eye on it for you to pot in April. Of course, one could start from seed or take a cutting to begin your love affair with dahlias. Okay. Our garden we had at the 3067 Sherman Road. We built 11 raised beds and proceeded with planting 55 dahlias. The left-hand column at the top shows repeats of 11 cultivars, and below it shows the summary of their sizes, A, B. And the top right itemizes the variety by size, and the lower right is an example of the spinny bed. Okay, planning and planting. Where we're going to start. So in 2012, our garden at 3067 was built from scratch. Poor drainage and clay soil certainly benefited from a network of drain pipes, 11 raised beds with 19 irrigation stations, faucets, and electrical outlets. Okay. Before buying a tuber, consider location. 6 to 7 hours of sunlight. It's good. Free air circulation, but not in a windy area. Dahlias need lots of water and irrigation. And a suggestion in a hot season, a half hour every 2 to 3 times a week. Good drainage, so raised beds do help. pH soil, 6.5, 7, ideal. So prep soil with organic material, manure, compost, leaf mold. Grow a green crop in the fall and dig under 1 month before planting, and fertilize. Okay. So the spinny bed, you know, we named all of our raised beds. And fortunately, there's a circular driveway around our beds. And this is good because I don't back up the trailer very graciously. And the height at the rear of the bed is 3 feet. And it's really, we appreciate that we can just put our wheelbarrow right up that pathway. Okay. But you got to consider what else is happening in that area. So in our spinny bed, we've got 2 irrigation, station 12, station 13, first and second cycle. Trees, evergreen, deciduous, shrub, fruit, perennials, corms, bulbs, rhizomes, vine. So where are we putting these dahlias? Right. Well, we're going to put them there, right at the back. And being that there's a 3-foot drop at the back, it's easy to work with them. So what we have there from left to right, we have the 6 there on the left starting is Holly Houston, which is an AA, Lee Castell, Lynn's Louise, Embrace, Taratai Ruby, and Lancress. Okay. Vine dahlias. Well, that's a photo I took at Vinters, but you can go to tuber sales, and certainly Victoria Dahlia Society in Nanaimo, they in the spring they have their sales, or at a nursery, privately, well, exchange with a fellow dahlia enthusiast, online, Rex Dahlias, and join a Dahlia garden club. Okay. Before we go on to the forms of the dahlias, it's the American Dahlia Society. They have a specific description of the forms, and what I'll be reading it'll be by the book. And I think it's also important when you're purchasing a dahlia that you actually see what the size is. Say, for example, a pom-pom. There will be a photo and it's up close, but it's no bigger than a golf ball. So you really want to know the size. Terminology I'll use, involute and revolute. So I kind of think, okay, what's involute? Then I think of a canoe. There's a canoe, involute, revolute, going around the other way. So just to help out there. Okay. So here are the forms, and maybe that you've got your attached, in the attachments, you got B for ball, miniature ball, pom-pom, cactus, semi-cactus, incurved cactus, anemone, collarette, single, minion single, stellar, peony, micro peony, orchid, orchid, water lilies, and the decoratives, informal and formal decorative, laciniated, and novelty. Okay. So there's Norman. Well, his hand. Anyhow, he has always had a hand in this. So you can see there's the stake. We've got our own index number, lemon drops, B for the size, and from your handouts there, that's 6 to 8 inches. The FD, formal decorative, WH is white, and there's, you know, a degree of numbers discerning the intensity of the color. So lemon drops. Command of Love, miniature ball, pink. And when we go back to the lemon drops, and I just need to refer back here, that we have, it's what they buy the book, double flowers, ball shaped, ray florets, blunt, rounded or indented, involute, most of their length, fully involute for about 1/2 their length, normally displayed in a spiral. Okay. And the command of love, same as the ball dahlias, differing only on size. Miniature ball dahlias are over 2 inches, but under 3.5 inches. Okay. Now, this is what I was talking about, the pom-pom. You would not get that that was in actual life, just you know, the size of a golf ball or smaller. And this Glen Place, this is I've gotten the photo from the National Gardening Association, the plants database, so garden.org/plant/view. And this is it's fully double flowers, similar to the ball dahlia, but more globular and smaller in size. The ray florets are partially involute for the whole of their length and fully involute for more than 1/2 their length. The straight cactus. This is from a fellow Victoria Dahlia Society member, Kathy Featherby, and I must get the name of it. And it's ray florets, revolute for more than 1/2 their length, pointed straight or recurved, radiating in all directions from the center. So it is definitely radiating there. Okay, blackberry ripple. That's a semi-cactus, and pre-COVID we did win a first place. The ray florets are broad at the base, straight, incurved, or recurved. Ray florets revolute for up to 1/2 their length. Incurved cactus, Alfred Grill. And this is, if I pronounce it correctly, Bulbes, Dahlia, the page, vivace.com. Well, ray florets revolute for more than 1/2 their length, with pronounced curvature of petals toward the center of the flower head. And Bloomquist Sweet is a collarette. And again, pre-COVID, we won our first place. It's open-centered with a single row of uniform, evenly spaced compound ray florets. And I'm there, I guess, yeah, that I can do. Okay, so evenly spaced. And the petaloid surrounding the disc, as you can see that there, should be less than 1/2 the length of the ray florets. Now, the anemone named Mexico, this is again from the National Gardening Association. They're dahlias with 1 or more rows of ray florets surrounding a center of elongated tubular disc florets. The disc floret should be fully developed and present a dome pin cushion effect. Now, another photo would show, if you had it sort of facing up, that, you know, the profile of that, you would see like a pin cushion that was, you know, would be sticking up there. Okay, this is a single, the Gwen Redcliffe. It's an open-centered dahlia with single row of uniform. So that's going around the edges there. Here, yeah. And surrounding the disc. And well, I have to say that we actually at the Nanaimo Dahlia show, It won first when it's a triple presentation and section champion. And with just the single, it won first and almost had the section champion. But so we will be able to register with the American Dahlia Society. Minion single, inflammation, fellow Victoria Dahlia Society member, Paul McKittrick. It's the same as a single dahlias, except with the diameter only up to 2 inches. So it's just smaller there. Now, Stellar, Clearview Del Sol, from the clearviewdahlias.com. Petals break gradually from immature to fully developed outer petals. Those on the outside should be narrow and involute with a slight recurve to the stem. The less mature petals should also be narrow and partially involute so that you can see it like the little canoe, right? Now, Bishop of Llandaff Peony. This is by Rolex-flowerbulbs.com. Is open-centered dahlia with 2 or more rows of ray florets surrounding the disc. Ray florets adjacent to the disc may be smaller, twisted, and or curled. And we'll go to the next one here. The Micro Peony, again, by Paul McKittrick. It's open-centered again, with 2 or more rows of ray florets surrounding the disc flowers. Ray florets adjacent to the disc flowers may be smaller, twisted, and or curled. The orchid, Midnight Star, as you can see, it's great. All the open-centered dahlias are great for well, pollinators. So we quite like them with that there. And again, it's evenly spaced. It's a flat plane. The petals are involute for 2/3 or more of their length and fully involute for at least 1/3 of their length. Okay. This is an orchette. It's again from the National Gardening Association. Fancy Pants is the name. Photo by Melissa Mayday. And it's much like the orchid, but with a collar of petaloids, as in the collarette. So the petaloids, that's what's different there. Okay. The water lily, Deborah Winay. Blooms are fully double. A side view should be like a saucer, and they present beautifully in a shallow dish. The center should be closed here, dome shape, breaking gradually to 4 to 7 rows of florets. Outer florets are broad and slightly cupped. Now, the informal decorative sonic bloom. Ray florets, twisted, curled, or wavy, imparting a petal which is not flat, for sure. Petals may be partially revolute with their arrangement irregular. So not quite a messy hair day, but in showing this would be an example of the center blown in Dahlia. You wouldn't be showing this. This, in fact, if it ended up on the table, it would be put to the back because they must not present with a blown center. But hey, pollinators like them. So I do have some in our garden that, it's blown, but the pollinators are enjoying them. And the Mardi Gras, this ray florets flat or partially involute, petals uniform and regularly arranged, tending to recurve towards the stem. And the Hall, I see Norman's put Holly Hill, 6 in 1. The split or laciniation should be proportioned to the ray floret length. So you've got these laciniated there. There should be an overall twisting in the area of the split to give an overall fringed effect. In this photo, it might appear that there are 3 different tubers. And you look at them. The amazing fact that it is just one tuber that has been hybridized to have these different color blooms. So yeah, we've got 3. So I'm just curious what the other 3 might look like. Yeah. And the novelty valley porcupine, this is from the dahliabarn.com. Basically, by the book, dahlias with characteristics differing from the present classification. And this is a great example of seeing the involute, because it, like a little canoe, there you go, right there. Now, the next little area what we're going to go on to is the processing your tubers. Then I'm just going to carry on here. So you're gonna wake up your tubers if you've been, if you've got tubers. So timing is everything. You got to plan a timeline that matches your needs. Now, some growers will pull out tubers from storage in March to warm, which provides another month for the eyes to form, and be ready for early May, depending on the weather. Now, above 50 degrees Fahrenheit, they will start to grow. Norman potted the Gwen Redcliffe tuber on my birthday, March 11th. And within less than a month, because we are fortunate to be having a greenhouse that's heated, that, it had started to grow. And other people, depending the size of what they're growing, Brian Bedford, the Victoria Dahlia member, the AAs take longer to bloom. So October, he starts in mid-February to have tubers with eyes on it for the end of March, and he'll overwinter his tubers in a recycled milk container. Kathy Beatherby, another Victoria member, stores her tubers in baggies filled with vermiculite in wood chips, like as in pet bedding, enclosed in a styrofoam box in her garage. She'll take the bags out for a week with no added moisture. She waits until they just start to dry and looks for the eye, and then puts them back in her garage. So yeah, they've got to be sort of checked in, fairly frequently. And just going back to here, we have the heated greenhouse. They would go into the hoop house when there's a little heater there, and then the cold frame outside. Okay. Now, healthy tubers to pot in spring. Norman was delighted with the Entac Eliza tubers. A total 10 out of 10 have eyes. Now, that doesn't always happen, but well, that was great. And that's a collarette. And when we're planting them, we could surround the tuber with, some people will do a 2/3 portion of sunshine mix 4 and a 1/3 portion of vermiculite, or potting soil. A fellow member said, big bag from Costco. Costco is reasonably priced. So, and you would leave only the stem end showing. You would cover the material to prevent the tubers from shriveling, and some will use a plastic dome cover to have uniform moisture. Okay, this was a tuber that our method we wrap in saran. And this was November 11th that it was wrapped, and it was potted on a flatbed carton April 4th of this year. And really quite quickly, the roots are revealed here on April 12th before being potted. And it's good to have a helper. Katrina helps us out, and we're getting them all potted in from the flat tray into the individual pots. And this is the photo of the Entac Eliza, a collarette with a pollinator there. And again, you see the open centered, it's a single row of uniform, evenly spaced compound ray florets, and the petaloids surrounding the disc should be less than half the length of the ray florets. So that's that there. Yeah. Preparing pots. So recycling food grade plastics. So this is photos from left to right. You may have to inspect with a magnifying glass, as not all tubers will have an apparent visible eye. And recent articles in the Citizen newspaper mention Norman's quest to recycle food grade plastic to pot plants. The following picture shows me in our greenhouse workshop drilling holes in the container for drainage, lining the pot with a sheet of paper cloth, filling it with soil, and laying and covering the Gwen redcliffe tubers. Once the eye is visible, that is, it's swelled and it's developed some color, you can fully bury it an inch below the surface. Use sunshine mix for, and not to water, because a lot of times the soil, it is moist enough that you don't need to water. And some will, we're in a greenhouse, but some would leave their pots in the dark, 20 degrees centigrade, until the sprouts break the surface of the potting mix. Some will use grow lights or sit their containers on a sunny windowsill. We're lucky to have a greenhouse, and you can do daily misting of the early roots. Okay, create your label with blinds. Print label information front and back with a permanent black felt tip. Hole punch at one end and use a rubber covered wire to attach label to the stake. And regarding going back to the watering, a suggestion here is once a second set of leaves appear, start to water lightly. Keep water mostly around the outer edges of the container. Still be careful not to get lots of water on the tuber portion to avoid rot. And you can see that, this is definitely moving along to be potted. Now, we're in managing your blooms, it's important, in fact, topping and disbranching is going to be really helpful when they're starting to get fully developed. So let's just go the topping or stopping, the picture on the left. The plant has been topped or stopped above the third pair of leaves, allowing 6 branches to grow. Each branch starts to develop at the point where the leaf joins the stem. Where did it go? There we are. There we are. And this will increase multiple branches and blooms. If left alone, the dahlia plant will continue to grow until one terminal bloom located on the growing tip has completed its flowering cycle. Exhibitors want to establish the time when the blooms are available and to maximize the size of the blooms. We'll talk about the disbranching a few slides from now. And as you can see with the disbranching, it's been topped, but disbranching on opposite sides. Okay. Topping indoors. Why you top or stop is because you don't want to delay the development of your laterals and therefore future blooms. So the process is you count your leaf pairs above the cotyledon. Here we are, right? And then you pinch out the center of the plant above the leaves to be kept. So, and usually 3. So you've got the cotyledon, then you've got 1 pair, 2 pair, 3rd pair. And so with that cut, there it is. And topping, stopping indoors and outdoors. Well, the top I cut off. I was trying to grow it as a cutting, and I applied the hormone powder. And I've mentioned when I've written this earlier on for another presentation, we'll see if it takes. Well, it did. So I've got some. I've got to try again. Meanwhile, you can keep this stopping schedule in mind if you're planting your tuber after the last frost date. So, outside. So depending on the size, you might stop, where is it here? For the larger dinner plate size, so 8 to 10 inches, June 15th. And ideally leave this many pair of leaves. Okay. Now we're going to go about the time of putting your tubers, like digging into the ground. So here we go. So the frost has it's passed. And for us, May 15th, it could be later. So you need to know in your area when, the frost is. And some girls will put in the stake first, or they'll dig the hole 10 to 12 inches deep and then put in the stake. You always want to label your stake. And a suggestion, some people will put aside the 2 to 3 shovelfuls of soil into a bucket on the side, and then they can mix in 2 to 3 double scoops of sea soil or your own compost, do your own mix. And then you continue to an adequate depth, setting the remaining soil aside and not into the bucket. And then, sprinkle a handful of bone meal into the bottom of the hole. You can also add a handful of alfalfa pellets, or, for a boost of nitrogen, cover with a little soil, keep 8 to 10 inches depth, place tuber at a 45-degree angle in the soil, close to the stake, freeze of tine, high space upward. And some growers are now planting the tuber vertically and having a helicopter effect in the growth. If the tuber is large, some growers will cut back to 6 inches and apply cinnamon or sulfur to the edge when it's dried, the cut edge. Fill in the hole, covering the bottom end of the tuber up to just a small amount near the shoot, leaving the growing tip visible. Now, if the soil has a normal amount of springtime moisture, do not water tubers during planting. Wait to water until after sprouts are well above the ground and feeder roots have continued to develop. Possibly up to a month of planting. Depending on how dry or hot the weather has been since they were planted. So again, always taking, local weather into account. Now, Nanaimo Dahlia club there, they don't fertilize until the growth is 12 inches high, and they'll fill in the soil, the hole with soil as the plant grows until the soil is level with the ground surrounding the plant. When the plant is almost 12 to 15 inches tall, they will tie the wire in a figure 8 so it supports, but it doesn't, strangle the dahlia's growth. And you can put 2 to 3 inches of mulch around the plant. You can use broken down leaf mulch. So when you're moving, say, you've started them in your greenhouse, you're going to move them outside. You do want to harden them off for, at least 4 to 5 days. And so that's where we went from the heated greenhouse to the hoop house. It wasn't an insulated, it's plastic, but we had a little bit of a space heater, and then into the cold frame. And of course, you have to moisten the soil a little bit to ease it out of the pot. And suggestion, just to remove the, first 1 to 2 sets of leaves and provide, plant below the ground. And so you're planting above the removed leaves, and that's to add a little bit more stability. Now going on to the irrigation, this it is best to water the dahlia at the ground level and not on its leaves. And we use a drip irrigation system, and this is just suggestions certainly during the hot season, 30 minutes 2 to 3 times per week, really throughout the growing season. And of course, it'll promote proper blooming in next year's tuber development. But you always want to kind of look out and see how they're doing, and just not, oh, okay, it's on irrigation, I can forget about it. So one of our members, Kathy Featherby, uses the blue heads if it needs less water and red heads if it needs more water. And what you see here with this ring, which I've nicknamed lollipop irrigation, Phil from our club, he puts it all around the plant. So you plant, and then you put the ring down first, then you do the plant. Okay. What it is good to do is to also mulch, which will help with curtailment of evaporation, gives consistent moisture, provides food to the roots near the surface. We also surround our dahlias with bricks to help keep the moisture in and to keep the weeds out. We're lucky in North Cowichan with drip irrigation. We're allowed up to 4 hours a day throughout the garden, so we're quite fortunate there. And I just want to mention something about the soil, and then we'll get on to the fertilization. The musician John Cage, his definition of musical notes compared with our plants. So where I'm going with this, He viewed music not as being the individual notes, but the space between the notes. I feel it is also important to look after the space between our plants because it's really all about the health of the soil. Okay. So with fertilizing early in the season, okay, about 4 weeks after planting, when plants 14 to 18 inches tall, some growers will apply a foliar spray of fish fertilizer. I haven't done that yet, but I'm going to convince my husband that we'll try that. Others will use 14, 14, 14. Also, a handful of Epsom salts and phosphorus to each plant will provide great color to your bloom. 2 times per growing season after hot spells are really ideal. So yeah, dissolve 1 tablespoon in 8 liters of water. And a second application can be applied a month later. Mid-August, if not already, start to fertilize with a higher second number, a soluble 15, 30, 15, or a granular 8, 24, 16, and high percentage of potassium and phosphorus. You can also use a 5, 10, 10, 10, 20, 20, or 0, 20, 20. This application should be made 3 to 4 weeks after the fish fertilizer application, promoting healthy blooms. And when you think about healthy blooms, when you think of the AA size, dinner plate size, over 10 inches in diameter, you really got to feed them. You want to avoid high nitrogen water soluble types as they promote weak stems, small blooms or no blooms, and tubers that rot or shrivel in storage. Don't want that. So late in the season, use a higher last number of potassium per tuber development, or can add potash to your soil. And you know, avoiding the nitrogen fertilizers, you know, when you see plants that, gee, there's all this growth of green, well, that's good. But if it's weak growth, and then you'll have pest disease problems. So again, prior to digging up your tubers at the end of the season, you want to discontinue watering and fertilizing a couple of weeks before. Okay. Now we spoke about the topping and stopping by removing the growing tip. Encourages the plant to grow more branches and therefore blooms. To exhibit, growers want to establish the time when the blooms are available and the maximum size of the bloom. So disbudding promotes longer, stronger stems and increases the size of the bloom first showing. And you know, the best time to snap off these little buds is when they're pea size. So you have the central and then little guys starting. You want to, and I think it's easier for smaller hands, so women's hands, fingers to snap off. So this is, in doing that, again, this aids the terminal bud to achieve its maximum size. Best to spud in the morning when the plants are crisp, and not necessary to spud more than the first pair of buds on smaller types of dahlias like a pom-pom. Right. Deadheading looks better, deters unwanted pests, energy goes towards new blooms. So with sterilized pruning shears, cut the stem of the bloom past its due date back to its initial branch or origins. And you may find that you begin to deadhead when the dahlia bloom has blown its center. And but then otherwise, why not leave it and the pollinators can enjoy. Disbranching. Take out the lateral stems to improve air circulation, ventilation. And this is going to increase growing energy into the blooms and to achieve the maximum size. So disbranch several weeks after the stopping or topping. And also a benefit is to remove the lower leaves, you know, up a foot from the ground. This will decrease the possibility of spider mites and powdery mildew. Now, we have been sitting and listening, and we're going to now do a little movement. And we're actually going to do the tuber wrap mantra. And we're going to go through the motions of the process of the digging, the washing, dividing, labeling, treating, wrapping, packing, and storing. So not unlike, you know, the YMCA. Well, this is the tuber wrap mantra. So while you're seated or, you know, you want to stand. Let's go to the next slide. The tuber wrap mantra. So we're going to go through the process of the digging, washing, dividing, labeling, treating, wrapping, packing, and storing. So here we go. It's coming up soon. Dig, wash, divide, label, treat, wrap, pack, and store. Dig, wash, divide, label, treat, wrap. Let's do it one more time. Ready, and dig, wash, divide, label, treat, wrap, pack, and store. Dig, wash, divide, label, treat, wrap, pack, and store. Thank you. Okay, before we go on to the next slide, that process was handled in 1 minute and 19 seconds. That's wonderful, because when you think, it wasn't that too long ago, some of our Victoria Dahlia Club members, they had 1,000 plants that they would be disbudding, 1,000 plants that they would be doing this dig, wash, divide, label, treat, wrap, pack, and store. So I was just happy to do it in 1 minute and 19 seconds. Okay. So here we go. Now, to dig or not to dig when the frost hits. Well, a dahlia needs a minimum of 3 months growth to develop mature tubers. So several weeks before digging, you discontinue the watering and the fertilizing. And Alan Fisher of the American Dahlia Society, quoting, "After a light frost, dahlias continue to grow and roots continue to mature. Ideally, after the first frost or before the fall rains begin to saturate the soil, cut the stalks back to 6 to 8 inches above the ground. This gives the growth of the eyes on the tuber a chance to become more visible as the tuber starts to send up new shoots to replace the missing stalks. This makes the tuber clumps easier to divide." So what we see in the photo of the Gwen Redcliffe here, that's October 21st. There was a little bit of a light frost on October 23rd. And a couple of days, is it time to dig? Yes. So to show dahlias, you always dig the tubers to preserve the future quality of the bloom. Otherwise, you can leave in a well-drained soil. Now, some people, it might even be below a ground frost. Cover with 6 to 8 inches of mulch, but ideally you want to dig and divide your tuber to preserve the blooms. And the other thing to consider about digging, ideally divide tubers every 3 years for bloom quality. And before digging, throw away any dahlias that produced inferior blooms or were weak during the growing season. And certainly destroy any plants with a sign of virus and incinerate or dispose to local landfill. Just an aside, digging dahlias, Norman and I were visiting Agatha Christie's Greenway property. The gardener said, no, they don't. So you could imagine, the clumps, the formation underneath, but, to show dahlias, you do dig. Okay. Now, just before or after the frost. Now, I've got to get a photo of, imagine that's back in the ground and it's cut back to 6 to 8 inches. So what we did is we covered it's in the ground, cut back to 6 to 8 inches. Okay, we put tin foil over the top there, and that is useful because you want to prevent crown rot, or if there was refreezing. And so now you've decided, you've dug it up, and you can see it looks like quite a mess. You've got, it's still labeled, that's good. Then if you have 2 people, depending on the size of the clump, and you do want to use a shovel and not a fork, because you don't want to stab the tubers. and you get about a foot away on, circular all around, and you would dig it up. You would, when the clump is lifted, you want to put it on its side or upside down to rid any excess water still remaining in the stalk. And you would, carefully remove any large clumps of dirt. Again, make sure you label, it's always labeled, because a lot of growers, if they're showing, if they don't have the label, then they throw the whole tuber out. If they're doing show, everything has to be labeled. The benefit of waiting up a week for the better growth of eyes to see when dividing. So, okay, the frost is hit, then maybe wait that time. But then again, it depends on how many plants you're, having to process. Okay. And what you want to see when you're cleaning your tubers, and to save on your back, set up 2 sawhorses there and a bit of a tray. That's going to be so much easier on you. And you just want to gently brush off the dirt. And you also gently hose down. And you want to observe the eye nut. Whoa, great. You can see that. And again, be sure to keep the label attached to the tuber. What we're looking at, I'm going to just go to the next one here. So you may choose to wash and divide the tubers in spring, and then leave the clumps intact. But a lot of people are really busy in the spring, and so if you are going to leave it till the spring, you've lifted them, but you're going to you don't brush away all the excess soil. You store in a large plastic bag and overwinter, and you can wash and divide them later. But you want to store in a cool location above freezing. Leave bags open to allow excess moisture to evaporate, but check periodically. Dirt around the clump should not be allowed to dry out. And let's just go on to this one here about the dividing the tubers. So you know which plants you're going to split because you documented your successes in your book. You tagged the ones you want to keep, thrown out the ones that you're not going to have. And you've prepped the variety of tools you'll use and keep them sharp and sanitized throughout splitting from clump to clump. Some will use the pruners, the Felco shears in 2 sizes, a chisel and a mallet, a particular knife that you're comfortable using, and of course wearing gloves. And we use, it's called sonic tool, but it's an oscillating blade, and I feel quite comfortable. It'll cut the tuber, but it won't cut you. So I'm happy with that. And you're also going to clean your clump, removing any broken areas and extra roots and rot. So you got to choose the most robust tubers and label. So again, you can see that you can use that pen. And when you cut, like say the ones that are over 6 inches, now we haven't cut back, but if you do, then, wait till the edge dries a little bit, then add the sulfur. And as I want to be using the cinnamon this upcoming year. And if tubers are wrinkled because they're immature or got too dry between the digging and packing process, just give them a light spritz of water. But you can see, when something is like, pencil size, less than the thickness of your baby finger, that could be questionable to be planting. I mean, after all, dahlias aren't necessarily low maintenance. Yes. Okay, let's go on here. Now, with the wrap, pack, and store. So we've chosen to use the saran wrap method. And we've also chosen to wrap each of in this bag, it's with our code number, but Gwen Rettler, there are 7 tubers in there, but each one is wrapped. I think it's easier for citing what's going on with each, the individual tuber, if there's rot or growth of an eye, that's always positive. So some, again, mainly growers will insert their tuber into a bag of vermiculite with wood chips, as in the pet bedding, with holes on the side for ventilation to decrease any humidity. You would store them in a dark place, and some Victorian members use a styrofoam box and keep the temperature between 45 and 50 degrees. Again, label. Now we're on to organic pest management. And I would like to use this quote from Steve Edney, taken from the middle-sized garden at Canterbury Cathedral, England. Organic gardening is control, not about eradication, but about balance, a healthy population, but not too healthy, of any pest or predator, a balance of things being eaten and those doing the eating. So when I see, oh my Lord, there are aphids, and then I go, oh, there's little baby ladybugs, well, they can sort it out. I've got a lot of other gardening things to do. So sometimes letting nature take its course. Okay. So you're going to pay attention to your garden. Keep a notebook and take photos. Look for abnormalities. Wear gloves, carry a small bag to collect the infected pests. And if you go to a nursery, there might be a master gardener and you've got that in a plastic bag and you can show them and they may be able to help you. Use a magnifying glass. Use a rain gauge and position a thermometer that registers minimum, maximum temperature at the site of concern. And of course, put it on the north side of a pole to place a temperature gauge. General weather conditions can play a major role in determining which diseases affect your plants. And yes, powdery mildew is favored by dry weather, especially when days are hot and the nights are cool. Oh, okay. With the Dahlia inventory, it's not like we have 55. We had 55 total in the Sherman Road garden. But this is just in the west bed that we had the 22 dahlias there. You don't need all this information, but what is really important is that then you can sort of put a colored tape or single out specific tasks, whether it's for pruning or disbudding, or when it requires you to put on your veterinarian's hat and to look after your zoo, because stuff happens. So some of the pesky pests you might encounter are slugs, earwigs, spider mites, brown stink bugs, root weevils, aphids, and caterpillars. Become a slug slayer. Now, a little story about this. When we were developing the Sherman Road property, without exaggeration, one night, 100 slugs, next night, 150 slugs. Well, initially, maybe I was a bit squeamish. I would be the pointer and Norman would go and kill. But then I became a slug slayer, Lee Valley, the headlamp at night, and the hoary night. So I wanted to be as most humane as possible and anatomically try to figure out where is the neck of this slug, and then I would guillotine them. And I felt better about that. Now, slugs will munch on any tender plant, use a copper flashing barrier, create a tuna can beer fest, set out raw potato or cabbage, destroy slugs in the morning, cover a seedling overnight with a tin can, protect seedlings with diatomaceous earth, encourage predatory beetles. Earwig trap. Well, again, Steve Edney views the use of inverted pots with paper inside on a stake as the old method and suggests to rub Vaseline around the stem 4 inches in length above the first set of leaves. He mentions although earwigs are bad for dahlias, they're predators for aphids, green and black fly. So look for those ragged petals and skeletonized leaves. You can use anti-pest ingredients, coffee grounds sprayed around the base of the plants, companion plants that repel, garlic, bay leaves, peppermint, and wormwood. Ooh, powdery mildew. Yes, white to gray spots appears as the fungus spreads across the leaf surface and other parts of the plant. So in growing your dahlias, if you thin out the center growth and remove branches, as mentioned before, from the soil level up to a foot, this will increase air circulation, ventilation, and space your plantings at least 3 feet apart. And you could use 1 teaspoon of baking soda to 1 quart of water and spray thoroughly. And increase feeding for the plant as it is stressed. So 8, 24, 16. Coreopsis beetle larva in adults. If I pronounce correctly, Calligrapha californica. So in the summer, adult beetles lay eggs in leaf litter near the base of the coreopsis. And now dahlia plants in spring eggs hatch and feed on the plants. The cycle repeats itself. And it was last year, June 3rd, Kathy Featherby, Victoria, remember, surmised that there wasn't enough coreopsis plants, so they've chosen to munch on dahlias. So you want to try to interrupt their cycle as adults to control their breeding. Pick off the 1/4-inch beetles, drop them in soapy water. Spraying continuously could damage the plant. If need be, insecticidal soap works better than dish soap. And just don't buy a coreopsis plant. Okay. So virus control, when in doubt, throw it out. Virus transmits via vectors from one open wound to another. And gall can stay in the soil up to 3 years. You don't want to reuse that pot or replant in that same place. And problems with dahlias that are imported, mainly from Europe, write a letter to the Minister of Agriculture. Buy local. Control is being monitored through the U of Washington. Oh, crown gall. Yes, it looks, you may see this when the tuber clump is dug up in the fall. It looks like a brain has formed in the soil. It is caused by the bacterium, Agrobacterium tumefaciens. Don't want to see that when you dig it up. Again, the photo from plantdiseases.org. There's Fusarium wilt fungus. Fusarium oxysporum causes yellowing and wilting of leaves and dark streaks in the stem. Destroy plant and tubers. Oh yes, here we are. Thrip and aphids. Well, aphids, I know when we were at school for the master gardeners, I mean, there was a little bit of a joke that, you know, aphids are born pregnant. You know, there just seems to be abundance of them. And they suck the sap from plants. Aphids secrete sticky honeydew that supports growth of sooty mold on leaves and fruit. Feeding can spread viral disease. So I'm not, you know, queasy and squishing them. I can spray them off with a, you know, little light burst of water. Best to do it in the morning. And then I actually take a Q-tip and try to, you know, clean it up. Okay, thrip damage. Viruses are often transmitted by them. And they burrow deep into the stems and buds. And the disease displays lines, rings, a mottled appearance, and streaks of dark and light green, as well as wilted, stunted foliage. You usually discard the affected plants. You can use neem oil, but avoid using toxic insecticides that kill bees and other beneficial insects. And the fungal botrytis. Oh, the gray mold is initially evidenced by a brown water-soaked spots that enlarge and develop a fuzzy gray or tan mold as the disease progresses. And this is from the Pacific Northwest. So the pnwhandbooks.org/plant disease. You don't want to see that. No. The Victoria Dahlia Society Club rehearsal for new presenters. Well, Norman and I, when we joined, we would be encouraged, and it was in the summer, that we would bring some dahlias of our own, just to, you know, kind of rehearse what it would be like to show. And, you know, we really were novices, and we didn't realize that the person helping us out was in fact a judge. And he was, you know, plucking one leaf to, you know, put opposite on the stem to match. So it was, you know, we provided, you know, of what not to do. And so I often think of the comedy, you know, Best in Show. And, you know, it's like, you know, of the dahlia. The head tilts at 45 degrees. That's the angle. The diameter is the distance between the base to the first set of opposing leaves. So there was another member, probably, I think, new, you know, we were new. And I was saying, oh, well, this is an example of what not to do. How educational is that? Perhaps at the show there should be a table and a sign. Do your dahlias look like this? Because at a show they look so perfect, and it's educating to see, what not to do as well. Okay. And this is at the Victoria Dahlia Society show. And it's a great opportunity to see the different forms of the dahlias. And we're still entering in the novice class. And I help the judges. I'm a clerk. At first it was sort of, basically running for the ribbons, but I sure pick up a lot of information. And when you're with a judge, you will be in one section judging a form, whether they're in size, like the B size, all kinds there. And Norman and I did take a judging seminar, but I think we're not inclined to take on that responsibility right now. And going with the Gwen Redcliffe Dahlia, this is a seedling. It started with a raffle at our Victoria Dahlia Society meeting. We won a package of seeds, and to our amazement, we inherited a wonderful result. Our president, Phil Newton, said, it's rare to have such a successful seedling. And Phil's so enthused with our results that the 3 tubers that we had given him and passed him, it's now 30 plants that he has, so many more tubers, and he would like to give some to exhibitors south of the border. And so in the process, a dahlia's name, Gwen Redcliffe, when the process is completed, will be registered with the American Dahlia Society. And so just this last weekend, as I mentioned, in Nanaimo, we were so pleased to win first ribbons and section champion, and also another seedling, a Jim Patson lineated bloom, won first in best in type. And August 27th in Victoria show, the Jim Patson also won first ribbon. So the name will now be entered into the American Dahlia Association. And just an area of our garden there, it's the bird bath bed, Alma Elizabeth, you can see there, a formal decorative. It won pre-COVID, it won first in best of type. And just to conclude, hopefully with good gardening management involving the seasonal maintenance of your garden, the use of clean tools and a bouquet of knowledge added each time you attend a talk or share with other gardening enthusiasts the challenges and successes you've encountered, your love of dahlias will grow. So I thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Gwen. That was wonderful. I can't think of a better expert on dahlias just looking at your garden in those pictures and all the awards you've won. Wow, amazing.
And I feel very much, at the beginning of this, and it's an inspiration. So, I encourage anyone to just make a start. Woody Allen, his definition of success is first just to show up and follow through. So, I mean, dahlias are for everyone.
Yeah, I always think of that Woody Allen skit too. Just show up, just give it a try, right? They're just so exotic and amazing looking that they seem sort of overwhelming. Like you'd have to be an expert to be able to grow them. But give it a try.
You just start, and it's like any relationship. You're developing a relationship with them, and you learn, and So it's not about being perfect for sure.
Right, a little bit of trial and error and see what works in your little microclimate of your yard.
Exactly.
We're having a little discussion in the chat about neem oil. Do you have any insight, Gwen, on neem oil? Do you buy it?
Well, no, I don't. But Jill Canny could assist us on that.
Yes, and she has been having a discussion back and forth.
Well done.
Okay, yeah. So maybe officially it's not really okay to use it, but it can be bought.
Yeah, I want to go towards the old natural. That's where I'm saying that, Norman, we're going to be using cinnamon and not sulfur.
That is really cool. Yeah, I didn't know that about the cinnamon. And I wanted to ask you personally about, because powdery mildew seems to affect my clematis all the time. But I know
Well,
it's because I've got too much stuff planted around the base of it.
and phlox, and I think it's the fact that it's the hot weather and the cool nights now.
Oh yeah, okay.
It's in our, yeah,
So
in our
can you
phlox.
repeat that solution of baking soda and water? What is the proportion?
What did I
Do
say?
you
A
remember?
teaspoon? Did
Sorry.
I say a teaspoon? And Joe is probably very good there. Joe,
Oh yeah. Okay, Joe, you could jump in
And
too.
well,
she's
and
very
yes,
good. She's
yes,
very good.
and actually, what Gwen said about trimming the plants up a foot, because one of the
Oh
things
yeah.
that you need to remember about um, this type of mold and mildew is that it is endemic and it's part of the healthy soil web.
Okay.
Just because our ornamental plants can suffer from it, you're not going to eradicate it. And removing the lower branches and leaves increases that air circulation, and not letting, when you water, as Gwen said about the dahlias, you don't water from above. Same thing as with tomatoes. You let that water run along the soil rather than go splash and up it comes.
Right.
And there are times where, I mean, look at your barometer and look at your little weather stations.
Yeah.
The average uh, moisture humidity is 70%. Well, doesn't molds love that? So yeah, it is an ongoing management. And
Okay.
for
Yeah.
me, even on my zucchini, I just cut the leaves off because they're dead anyway. If you're growing show plants, as Gwen is, then you're going to need to have a higher level of management. So you
Right.
just have to decide um, who's going to be showing along in the show, who's going to be along the front yard. I know people that do a lot of trimming in their front yard thing. Their backyard, well, that's another story.
Yeah.
So that's really the way to me, the way to go about it.
Right. Okay. A couple more questions here. I have from Karen and Ian. I have several dahlia plants that have suffered all seasons. Some are very short, some still haven't bloomed, etc. Are these examples destined for the garbage, or do you feel that this could be because of the weather this year, sort of thing,
Well, I guess,
and
yes.
try again next spring with the same plants?
Well, you're going to know a lot more too with the tubers, but if they, so something may be happening below the ground. It's not quite like the
Okay.
Titanic and the iceberg, but if they're not performing, you've got to look at, well, where are they located, and are they getting the sunlight? So you kind of sleuth
Right.
out all of those. And if they're not turning out the way that you want to, I mean, you get to decide, like, that is not happening,
Yeah.
and so it's,
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes you have
Consider.
to eradicate them.
Yeah, yeah, just consider many factors. Okay, and another question, Mary Carroll. I just want to clarify for the tuber care. Just dig them up and let them dry for a day or two, then wrap in saran type wrap,
Well, we
and
do.
then in the dark in the garage.
Yeah, we put them in a bag, and then it's in the tool shed side of our greenhouse, which doesn't have the heat. And so it's cool enough, and it's dark because they're in a bag. But it depends on the number of tubers and your space, where are you putting them,
Right, they're
a lot
saying,
of factors.
yeah, they're saying I don't have a greenhouse to start in the spring. So, yeah, not
Uh,
everybody.
no, they don't have a greenhouse, but a garage unheated,
Okay,
maybe.
yeah, try and
Yeah,
find a basement, maybe
yeah.
something.
Yeah, and you
Okay.
don't want it to, you don't want any excess moisture, like in a basement. Like, you wouldn't leave them right on the ground. You have them raised. You could, and the
All right.
styrofoam box is useful.
Oh, okay, styrofoam boxes. All right, and from Connie, I think Connie, you're up in Courtney. I think I recognize that name. Just this week, fluttering white fly have appeared. How to deal with those?
Oh, is that cabbage
White
moth?
fly. I'm not
Is that it?
No,
sure.
white fly's a little bit different.
White fly, not
And
moth. Yes, Joe.
it's interesting that it took so long to appear.
Ah,
Um, so
Oh,
first question is, just as Gwen said, but first question is, are you sure it's whitefly? It might be thrips. What plant has it appeared on? Have you, seeing as that it's late in the season, have you brought a new plant in? And third, they are difficult to eradicate because they go into the soil and lay their eggs there and then emerge the next spring. That's why I'm thinking, wait a minute, it should not be this late. But thrips can sometimes appear late in the season. They are hard to deal with. Insecticidal soap, treat treat the soil. Also, because they do lay in the soil, that area that you saw them on that plant, put plastic just, 2 feet in a circle, and let the sun hit that in the spring, and they can't emerge, and you've solarized them, you've cooked the little buggers. But it may take 2 or 3 years to
wow.
eradicate whitefly. They're very persistent.
Great. Okay. And someone's just checking back again. Did we ever find out the baking soda to water solution for the?
Oh, sorry. The 1 teaspoon of baking soda to 1 quart of water.
1 quart of water. Okay, there you go,
Yeah.
Susan, asking that question. Excellent. Okay, any more questions? Just put them in the chat there. It's great having you too as well, Joe.
Yes,
We've had
Joe.
a couple
Thank
of
you, Joe.
compliments to Gwen too. Excellent presentation, such an expert. Wonderful information, so much information, lots of compliments here. All right, great. I think that's it. Gwen, fabulous. Thank you so much.